This time we're talking about Invincible, Season 3, Episode 2, A Deal with the Devil.
I can't force you to see things how they really are. But here's what you still don't understand. You can be the good guy. Or the guy who saves the world. You can't be both.
Welcome to the Invincible podcast on TV Podcast Industries. This time we're talking about Invincible, Season 3, Episode 2, A Deal with the Devil on Amazon Prime Video. But it's a good one, Dark, isn't it? This is the one I wanted to talk about because this is the one where I'm like, this sets up the majority of this piece I was talking about in Episode 1, which is that grayscale. Because you get young Cecil Steadman.
Yeah, this was a real shocker to get the story of who Cecil is. From what I understand, this is not something that was told early in the comic books. The history of Cecil and who he is and where he came from. Even when I had a look a couple of days ago, just about who Cecil was, because I was just trying to remind myself again, there were people that were still going, it's never been explained where he got his skin and why his skin has that mark on it. It had never been explained. I think that might have been from a few years ago, though. I think in the comic books there is an explanation from it, but it didn't come until much later. So really interesting to have this episode in here so soon, 2 episodes in, and suddenly we're getting a backstory of who Cecil is and where he came from.
Yeah, and I think it's part of this, and we'll get into all the nitty gritty, but it's very much, they are trying to set up the two opposing dichotomy of thought here. And interestingly, Mark is being set up as the rigid, utopian, kind of unyielding kind of approach. And then you have the realistic, pragmatic person who most people will agree with in Cecil. Yeah. And you're kind of getting this interesting, like, oh yeah, but our hero he's our hero. But then you're like, no, but but Cecil's speaking real life. Like, this is reality. Obviously not, it's a cartoon, but you understand the premise.
I think the idea is as you get past the age of about 19 or 20, the opinions that you form will change over time. And I think as a 19 or 20 year old, you probably think they will never change in your entire life, that you are convinced you are absolutely right. There is no possibility anything in the world could change your mind about your opinion. Cecil's a lot older and has seen a lot more in his life than Mark has. And if you think about it, while Cecil is a duplicitous character, you don't know really what he's going to do. He is very reasonable and has a very thought out answer to why he does the things he does. It may not be the decisions that you would make or that Mark would make or that other characters in the show would make, but Cecil has a line of thought that he follows when he comes up with his idea of how he deals with things. And he always just wants to get people to look at his point of view and understand the decisions that he's made. But people like Mark are very rash and very opinionated and have made their decisions as to what way the world should work. Cecil's probably a student of how the world actually does work, as opposed to, or the galaxy actually works. So, as I said before, I kind of get Cecil because he is the comic book version of Nick Fury in the Invincible world. He's the person that makes those decisions that nobody else would make. So, really interesting to see how he was created here, in this episode.
Man in the tower, man on the wall, man on the moon.
Man on the wall.
Man on the wall. There you go. I knew I'd get there in the end. I knew it was a man in a place looking down. That was it.
That's the final state of Nick Fury, yes. But he had always been the man on the wall throughout his time in S.H.I.E.L.D. and stuff in the Marvel comics. So, yeah.
But speaking of this episode, should we jump into some episode details and then get into the synopsis?
Absolutely, yeah. This episode was written by Helen, Leigh, who wrote episode 204 and 205, and also the Atom Eve special. So she's had a lot of serious episodes throughout season 2 of Invincible. This episode is directed by Haylee Herrick, who directed episode 205 and the Atom Eve special as well. So again, two big episodes of the show.
Yeah. And great episodes.
Really good episodes, yeah. And Chris, do you want to give us the synopsis for Season 3, Episode 2, A Deal with the Devil?
Sure. As a younger agent for the Global Defense Agency, Cecil Steadman was almost killed by Forcefist and Knucklebuster during a mission. Following his reconstructive surgery to fix his face and missing pieces of skin, Cecil learns his boss, GDA Director Radcliffe, has recruited Forcefist and Knucklebuster to work for the GDA. Unable to accept this decision, Cecil puts a bullet in each of their heads and is sent to prison for 3 years. But when he sets the prison to rights, he learns this was just another GDA test. He's released and offered the job of GDA leader. Back in present day, Cecil tries to calm Invincible down in the White Room. He has him surrounded by hundreds of reanimates, but Mark is incensed. When he continues to destroy the cyborg, Cecil goes for his last resort. Invincible has been implanted with a tag that stops all of his motor functions via blaring sound in his inner ear. When Mark finally escapes and returns to his friends on the Guardian of the Globe, the team splits over the revelations and Cecil's approach to try and control Mark.
Yeah, so as we said, a very focused episode on Cecil.
Yes.
Who he is. There's other things that happen in the episode as well, but I think the focus on Cecil is really important, and it's fascinating that the episode is very much saying, back in the day, when Cecil was a young agent, he had exactly the same reaction to the GDA doing what he's now doing, as Mark did. So it's so interesting that that's the concept.
I loved it because it's so... You're starting to find out that two of them are cut from the same cloth.
Well, yeah, that they have similar opinions. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And starting out with our main point for the episode, let's talk about creating Cecil, who he is, who he was, and how he began and how he is now, I suppose. We learn how he got those scars. This is the fundamental of what's happening here. We've always seen Cecil with that scar on the side of his face. That's a defining characteristic of the character. It's always looked out of place. And here we learn that when he was on an early mission, he was following two other villains, Forcefist and Knucklebuster, the two of those characters, who were trying to release a toxin to kill everybody around them, to kill the world, effectively, and make the world have to restart and focus on things that were more important. Cecil went in on his own, and we see a cool kind of spy moment where he has a code word that he gives to the GDA to get them to come in and stop the attack, but they think he's actually given up and he's on his own. I thought that was a cool little twist, because you feel like Cecil has given up, just like Forcefist and Knucklebuster did.
Yeah, and I enjoyed the overall, the old school look of it, because it does kind of set it as that kind of, it's not the 60s, it's definitely not the 70s or 80s, I think it's like early 90s, they're trying to set it based on the look, and it's fun just to see. I remember, this origin is almost beat for beat, in terms of the comics, and again, you don't learn that until much later in the comic books. And it starts to then you really understand more about Steadman and why he is the way he is. Setting it up this way, you're showing that he was that idealistic youth of the past, the same way that Mark is. And you're setting him up to say that he is the same as Mark, except right for that end, where he puts two bullets in at the end, and he's sent to prison for it. Yeah. So that's, again, it's almost, well, we'll find out, because this is before the flash forward back to the White Room. I want to say flash forward, but you know what I mean. The flash forward to the flashback that we're getting. Yeah,
but I know the point you're making. The minute that Cecil finds out that Forcefist and Knucklebuster are supposed to be on his side, have been retrained by the GDA, he takes his gun out and shoots them both in the head. Mark was in the same room as Darkwing. While he was surrounded by Reanimen, yeah, he took out all the Reanimen, but they are cyborgs. He didn't kill Darkwing. That wasn't his instant idea. He didn't break his back or take his head off, which he could have done. He didn't do that. But Cecil did do that when he found out the similar situation back in the past. So Cecil was even more reactionary than Mark, let's say. Mark may be angry, but he didn't lose control and kill someone immediately. He still was able to restrain himself in a way.
For now. Because that's the fun part of this. Yeah. And then you get that nice prison scene. And this was fun for me because you get him put into the prison of where he's put all these bad guys before over the years from the GDA. And then quick fast forward and he's boss.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I loved it. I love just that kind of click. And you hear, ooh, fresh meat. Ooh, hey piggy, oink oink. Literally, and there's like pigs graffiti put across the wall and everything. And then you see people just cleaning it. I love that because that is this character. He is. Yeah, of course he's going to be able to be put in the room with the biggest guy who should kill him, and then suddenly he's the muscle for this person now. So
yeah, but you even get the feeling that the guards are putting him in that room so that he'll be dead soon, sooner rather than later. But he survives for the 3 years, and a bit of an interesting one with the reveal at the end that this was a test by the GDA, and that by doing what he did, by putting everything in its right place and him being in control of the prison, that they're willing to give him the job as head of the GDA now. And if he doesn't accept it, he'll have to stay in prison. But that's what they were testing him to see if he would be the leader of the GDA. It's an interesting idea, isn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't ring true until you kind of remember that. Yeah, suddenly he's just using bad guys for his own machinations. And then that's where you start to go, oh, the GDA is not the best place.
Yeah.
When you start to understand that, like, for years they will use whatever tools at their disposal. You use whatever tools are available to you. And that's really what the test is about. That's what Radcliffe was pushing from Cecil, which is, you can survive, but you need to use the tools. And you're not going to like the tools because those are the tools that you put away. Yeah. These are the bad guys that have killed hundreds of people. So are you willing to work with a killer to further your plans and your life and make things better? And I think that's where it's fun and is given that he's then put in as GDA leader. And he's not even liked when he's in. He's introduced to Donald, and then all of the rest of them are just phoning in the work until the Omni-Man situation.
Exactly. And yeah, we see Cecil talking about that situation with Omni-Man, saying, you know, well, we'll see what he can offer, but we need to investigate every single possibility here to control this guy or to stop this guy if it all goes bad, which is Cecil's way of dealing with everything, I suppose. And we have seen Radcliffe before in the show, haven't we? At some point, where did we see him? So,
pretty sure we saw him in the Adam Eve special. He was the original GDA director back in the day.
Yeah, of course.
And then we will get. He turns up in other aspects of... Anytime there was a past flashback of the GDA, usually he's the character that was kind of brought in.
Okay, yeah.
So any character who has a past with the GDA or brought in with the government back in the day, that's him.
It's like the original Guardians, if they're around, we'll see them with Radcliffe a lot of the time as well as with Cecil. Okay, Grant, okay.
That being said, we have seen them massage the storyline. They've said they're not afraid of massaging and using and picking and choosing, and that's what Kirkman has done and said.
Absolutely.
I can see them using Radcliffe further and delving a bit deeper into him because he is a cool character. So let's just kind of hold in terms of whether we see him again. I think we might, but again, it might be they might just put him in for Steadman, or Steadman might step in for him in the past.
Yeah, I just think it was interesting that he said to Cecil, I want you to take this job as the head of GDA because I've got another operation to go off to. And I was kind of going, I wonder what that operation is. And then realized, of course, this is a major flashback. This is 10 or 20 years ago, I was going, when did this happen? And, where has he been for that period of time?
Yeah.
So interesting. But that's kind of it for creating Cecil. That's all the kind of flashback stuff. So let's go back to the White Room for our next point because, quite a major moment that we have Mark in there again. We mentioned it before that Cecil has brought Mark into the White Room because this is a place where he feels a little safer, at least, because he can surround Mark with the Reanimen. But Mark goes all out and kills every single one of them that we see in the White Room. And I love the moment where the light flips on or off, I guess. Whatever way it happens in the White Room, we see the rest of the Reanimen, and they're even more powerful, it looks like, than the basic Reanimen that Mark's just ripped apart.
Yeah. As far as I remember, it's the lights off. Because it's bathed in a particular white light.
Yeah. Must be that, yeah.
Something like that. So, this is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Although, this is the moment I was talking about in the last episode.
Okay, yep.
There's definitely a moment where Mark is going through the Reanimen that just looked a bit janky.
Right.
And I was like, okay, he is fighting hundreds of them.
Uh-huh.
Maybe they just reused a few cells or something.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Kind of, not cells, because they don't do them as cells anymore, but you understand.
Yeah. Copy and paste.
Someone literally copy-pasted here.
Or A-B... repeat, I guess.
Yeah.
It's the video version of that, yeah.
Just something feels slightly off. But
right.
They basically still kind of took the brakes off Mark here. They took the training wheels. And again, remember, he's X amount faster, X amount more endurable, and 75% stronger.
I think Donald says 150%, and they run out of ways to test him after the 90 days that he was training with them in the first episode, that they'd run out of things that they could use to test how strong he is. The thing he's holding up in that episode when Rex walks in is the weight of a planet, I think they said, or maybe the weight of a skyscraper, something like that. But they were kind of going, I don't know what else we could do to show how strong he is. He's just immeasurably strong, and it's significantly more than when he started the training. So yeah, they're probably getting a bit worried. But yeah, and the point is, and no, you say that scene's a little bit janky, and I agree with you, but I suppose the point they get across here is that Mark's not going to stop. He's going to destroy every single thing in front of him, because of how vehemently he disagrees with this idea, that Cecil has rehabilitated these two murderers that he's put behind bars. So he is literally killing every single one of these Reanimen that have been made. We don't have any idea how many there are. It's been a kind of a reference from Cecil, over and over again, that D.A. Sinclair has been building more and more Reanimen, and that money has been filtering through him, to build as many as possible, and that there is an army worth of them. But Mark definitely took a good chunk of them with him there, before the final button is pressed from Cecil to control him. And really interesting choice they made, isn't it?
I love this because this has been brought up a few times in those comic books kind of nerdy conversation of how do you take down an invincible character. Well, something that's been implanted inside them. Yeah. Usually a good thing. And then on top of that, for someone who can fly, well, their inner ear, if they're any way humanoid, is usually the way to go. So we know, well, Cecil put a chip. It's the communicating chip. It's the basically it's the two-way transmitter and the locator beacon and the thing they use to chat. Yeah. That was put inside of Mark. But at the same time, he put in this. It also essentially emits a noise that is painful for Mark, that sets off his nervous system and allows his inner ear out of whack. Yeah. And it's so good.
And what I really loved about the choice here, it is a character we've seen Mark fight back in season 2. It's the giant lobster that almost got the better of Mark, and Cecil was watching on, and Cecil kind of went, you know what? This could be a great tool for us to use to keep him in check if we need to do it, because that's Cecil. He's always thinking, he's always going, what would happen if he turns on us, you know? It was interesting seeing it in the flashback that he was already thinking that about Omni-Man before Omni-Man turned on them, and now he's thinking about what happens if it happens again, if Invincible turns on them. So he has this chip implanted in him, from that giant squid, that was almost killed Mark, and is able to get him under control again. But Mark is able to still fight against it because he is still super powerful and makes his way to, the Guardians of the Globe's, headquarters.
Which is so fun to see. Because he literally, it's that, I think we've seen different variations of this kind of where it's that you have your Superman, you have your whichever superpowered character it is, down on their knees, push through the pain and fly away to get away from the noise, the bad rays, the whatever.
Yeah.
And here, like, you get him, he flies up and up and up and up and up, and then he's out of range. Cecil blips in behind him, pulls the button again, and he plummets down to the earth. And you get this slight cat and mouse teleport flying. And he goes, I can't push it again right now. He's overpopulated area. I need to wait. And you keep getting this until he does land, as you said, in the Guardians, the below a mountain.
Yes, exactly.
The Guardian Mountain.
Yeah, and I love the kind of meta joke. I think we talked about it last season about how much it costs every time Cecil uses the transporter. It's in the billions, and he uses it about 15 times to try and get across the planet to catch up with Mark, and he's always behind him because Mark's traveling so fast it's almost like they can't set up the transport fast enough to get him ahead of Mark, so he's unable to take him out, and then he's over a city, as you say. So I kind of love that meta joke. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was going, how much did this cost? Which is a good little bit of fun when you're watching it. It's good stuff. So yeah, that takes us to our last point, really. The Guardians split in half because Mark arrives into the Guardians of the Globe headquarters trying to get Rudy to help him to take out this chip from his body. Cecil has put it in so far that if Mark tries to take it out himself, he'll injure himself really badly. That was the part of the plan. But again, because Cecil is using his teleportation device, he arrives almost immediately afterwards. So there's a very quick split decision from the Guardians of the Globe. And I really like this. Again, another great touch from the writer here. You have the Guardians of the Globe listening to Mark. Some of them are really good friends with Mark. Some of them have different relationship with Mark. So they all have to make this split decision. Do we believe what Mark's saying to us, or do we still stay on Cecil's side? And it splits the group in half directly. We have Rex, Bulletproof, Monster Girl, Rudy, and Shrinking Ray all leaving the group. And all of them would have been former members of the teen team who were brought into the Guardians of the Globe after they were killed by Omni-Man. Well, sorry, not all of them. In fact, I think Bulletproof is a brand new character who wasn't in the teen team at the time. But the rest of them pretty much were people that were brought into the Guardians of the Globe since the first season. Shrinking Ray might have been a backup character. I don't think she was in the Guardians of the Globe or the teen team.
She auditioned. She was one of the audition ones along with Monster Girl.
That's right. That's it. So they haven't been in the group very long. That's probably the better point. I think Rex was in Teen Team. That's probably the only member of Teen Team, actually, now that I think about it. But
Rex and Robot.
And Rudy, yes, that's Rudy. Right. Yes. Robot, yes. But the ones that stay behind, Immortal, Duplicate, who is of course engaged to Immortal, Shapesmith and Black Samson, all staying as members of the Guardians of the Globe and staying on the side of Cecil. I absolutely love Shapesmith's reasoning for staying behind. He's kind of going, well, I would go with you guys, but I probably should be in jail. And because Cecil allowing me to live here, I'm going to stay here with them so I don't go to jail.
And I have a race car bed.
Exactly, I had to have a race car bed, of course. But I really like that because, again, and if you think about it, he is underlining the whole point of what Cecil's been doing, right? He is another rehabilitated murderer. He's someone that killed people on Mars, left Mars, went to Earth, killed a few people on Earth as well, and is allowed to join the Guardians of the Globe. So he is another rehabilitated villain, almost. Yeah.
He did things by accident, I think is the best way.
Yes.
Just a quick, for any of, because I know someone might say, Duplicate was a member of the teen team as well, but she stays, so it's a different. Duplicate staying with the Immortal makes sense.
Yeah.
Immortal is that straight up. he's the immortal. He is automatically going to side with Cecil and the side of good and right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Black Samson, he's the interesting kind of one here because he does even later on, like he chats and understands where these two are going. He understands where Bulletproof is coming from. He understands where Rudy and he tells Rudy to tell Monster Girl why he's really going, but actually really also knows the true reason Rudy is going. Robot is going.
Yeah.
He's the pragmatist. He's the old man who's been around for years. So it's fun to see that.
And it was an interesting line, wasn't it? That he was saying to Rudy, tell her why you're really going, and Rudy was saying, because it's more important to me to be close to Invincible.
Yeah.
So why is that? Why is that important?
Because Invincible one day is the most powerful man on the planet. And that is Rudy says, one day I may need him on my side. And it's that kind of, you need him to owe you. Because, Mark could, and as by last season we saw other Marks and other Omni-Men took down the planet. Yeah. Between them. Mark could pretty much take down majority of the heroes here. The villains as well. If you take off his training wheels and take off his conscience. That is going to be the piece. So, yeah, it sets up an interesting premise, which is, well, yeah, do you side yourself with the government? Do you side yourself with the guy who theoretically could take down the government within 2 seconds if he so chose?
Well, yeah, exactly. And it's really interesting what you say. Yeah, Immortal will pretty much always side with this group, even though he's left the Guardians of the Globe twice before. And Black Samson is almost going, well, I'm the leader of the Guardians of the Globe. I can't leave. I've finally got the job as leader of the group. I can't possibly leave the group. But yeah, it's an interesting one where they have this absolute split between the group, but we do get a member added to the team. Darkwing is added by Cecil. He tells the team Darkwing has to be a member of the team now. So an interesting moment from Donald, who's kind of questioning that decision as well. So
yeah, and I get it. It's an interesting thing. Like the poor kid was left in the city of the endless night, and he went crazy and killed lots of people. Yeah. But he went crazy and killed loads of people.
Exactly.
I don't even know. I'm going to say Jeffrey Dahmer, but he's not. He's worse. He's that level of crazy.
He was, yeah.
So it's that kind of like, well, how long until crazy shows its head again? That kind of like crazy once, crazy always.
But that's the thing about rehabilitation, right? If you believe in rehabilitation and you believe in prison, then you believe that everybody can be rehabilitated if they've gone through the process, right? But I guess I love the bookend. It makes a lot of sense that this is your episode, and following an episode where you had Mark freaking out about murderers being used by Cecil, this episode seemed to say, well, Cecil used to be of the same opinion as you, Mark, and it ends with, by the end of the episode, a split between the groups, some people on Cecil's sides, some not, including Donald, who's going, even though he's the right-hand man of Cecil and has been for all 72 versions of Donald that have been brought back to life, he still questions some decisions that Cecil makes, even after all this time. So I really like that. So you kind of have that arc almost that says Cecil used to be like that, but still lots of people don't believe in the decisions he makes, even though he's come around to it himself. It's kind of interesting. Anything else that happened in the episode you want to talk about, Chris?
Just a quick one for me. Forcefist and Knucklebuster. I always get that wrong. I want to say Knuckleduster. It will happen every time. It will happen at least 4 times. So much like episode 1, in episode 1, when we got the Guardians and all the superheroes being taken by the kaiju and underend, there's a lot of characters in the background that just are reshown and stuff like that. And there's some that we've seen before, and there's some that have been just not shown yet, but are in the comics and become prominent in the comics. There's definitely 1 or 2 that I noticed. some people may look at Forcefist and Knucklebuster and go, oh, I know that guy with that design on his chest. I'm pretty sure I've seen a comic book like that. Not the same person, different thing. Wait till later. Might get reused, might not.
Okay.
But the design of Forcefist and Knucklebuster has been, and I don't know the history of it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, should know the history of whether it's a daughter or a son or something like that, but it's not the same.
This is one of your obscure ones for people
Yes.
that have read the comics and are thinking that it's something else. Okay.
Yes.
The only thing I do know from the show and from the episode is that they are members of the Order of the Freeing Fist, which is the symbol that's on them, and it's outside the shop, the hippie store that Cecil goes into.
Yeah.
That's on the wall outside. So potentially it's other members of that group that you're talking about. Maybe. But yeah, if you were expecting that these characters were going to be major characters and then see Cecil shoot them both in the head, that's not necessarily the final time you'll see them, though. I was just thinking about it. Not every character that's died, I think, has come back at some point, regardless of whether they've been ripped apart or not. So we may see them back even with those bullets in their head.
Again, maybe.
You never know. They could return. The only other thing I wanted to mention before we talk about the post credit is Mark's mom is on a date with Paul, who we saw asked her out on a date last season, but she does go out on a date with him in this episode as well.
Oh yeah, Paul.
Yeah.
Nice.
The reason why I mention it is because underneath all of this stuff, underneath the backstory of Cecil, the fighting, the killing of all the Reanimen, as always with Invincible, there's some relationship stuff going on. And there's quite a big relationship moment that goes on in the post-credit scene. In episode 1, didn't mention it earlier on, but Mark does ask out Eve based on the conversation he had with future Eve, who saved him in season 2. But Mark does the really stupid thing of almost saying verbatim what Eve said to him, which was, tell me you love me, or tell me you don't love me, tell me something, because I've spent 30 years wondering, basically. Eve took that really badly, as she should. But this time, in this episode, in the post-credit scene, we see Mark actually making up for that. He says he knows this is a real love, there's a real thing between the two of them, because the only thing Mark could think about when he thought he was going to die was, would he ever see Eve again? And he knows that is really, truly something that they should work on together. The two of them should try this out. The two of them should have a date, effectively. So I just like, again, it's another part of Invincible that's different to most other shows like this, most other superhero shows. You don't generally get to the heart of the matter. You don't generally get to these type of relationship discussions that Invincible does. So I liked the kind of arc of that, of Mark realizing maybe I should think about what I'm saying to this person that I'm asking out. Eve going, hang on a second, he's only asking me out because I was a loser in 30 years pining over a teenage crush that I had, which I thought was a great little moment between the two of them. And Mark going, actually, we need to try this out because you were the only thing I was thinking of when I thought I was going to die.
The way that the music grows during that moment really underpins what it is. Like, again, this is the one thing I think you talked about, that the choice of music when you said the Chemical Brothers in the last episode, and this was just some nice score, but it was just well played and well chosen, and really just kind of underpins that moment well. Yeah. And for those who don't know, this is your MJ Peter Parker.
Absolutely.
This is your one true love that goes through hell and earth. This is your Lois Lane and Clark Kent. And this is the moment you start to see it all come together. Yeah,
I think throughout Amber's relationship with Mark in the first 2 seasons, we were going, it probably isn't going to last because he's definitely meant to be with Eve. So now he is. But there is a moment, and I know again, they're teenagers. So there is a moment with Eve where she's going, promise me you want this relationship. This isn't, you're not going to break up with me ever, basically. And you're going to go, well, how can Mark really promise anybody? How can anybody promise anybody you'll be in a relationship for your entire life when you haven't even started and haven't even dated? So at least they're going to go out and have a date, which is nice. Love's in the air in the post-credit scene.
Exactly. But before we get into the third and final episode of this premiere, I'm going to ask Derek, do you defend this episode 2 of Invincible Season 3.
I really like this episode. I like this one much more than the first episode. I really liked the first episode, but it absolutely did what it had to do. A first episode of the season, setting up where all the characters are. This episode, because we're getting a backstory of Cecil and realizing that he was someone that had very similar views to Mark and they've changed over time. I think that's a really good premise for an episode, and it was delivered really well. I think really Walton Goggins sold the dilemma of Cecil as well, because when he's talking to Mark, you can hear him just go, just listen to me for 5 seconds. I might be able to explain. Just listen to me. And Mark is going off, killing the Reanimen all around him. But Walton Goggins is just trying to get the attention of Mark to tell him the story that we're seeing, this background story that we're seeing, that he used to have the same opinions. And over time, that opinion has changed. And maybe if they had just sat down and had a conversation, maybe he could get Mark on his side, but it's changed everything. The Guardians are split in half. Mark's now left the Guardians and doesn't want to ever work with Cecil again. And we've learned who Cecil is as well. So it's a really good episode. Strong, very strong, very strong. How about yourself, Chris? What did you think of this one?
I love this one. Absolutely love this one. This is the one where, for me, I can't say better than you, which is they set up episode 1. Episode 2 is where they are setting up the dilemma of this season. This is the storyline, the thread that kind of starts, that always made Invincible interesting. Continued to make Invincible interesting, which is, well, there's too much grey in the real world.
Yeah. So
what happens in those superhero worlds where your Superman can't be the golden boy?
Exactly.
Or if he doesn't, if your Nick Fury isn't the golden boy that your Superman thinks he is.
Yep. That could be the thread for the whole season, or that could be resolved next week and Fightmaster and Dropkick come back and they're the central characters for the rest of the season. We have no idea at all. What we do know is we're going on to the 3rd episode of Invincible Season 3. You want a real costume, right? As I mentioned before, we have recorded all these in one sitting, but they are available in individual podcasts on your podcast player of choice or over on our website at tvpodcastindustries.com. Otherwise, we'll talk to you on the next episode.